36 months.
Kelley Ford on your radio, Tuesday edition of the program. Make sure to find him on X at KFord Ratings, KFordRatings.com, and then thelines.com. You would have to think, when you look at Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti with the Big Ten, that they have already had these conversations prior to coming out and saying, hey, the Big Ten and the SEC are now partners in some degree. You would think legalities they have probably discussed, or that's going on, what they can do, because, Sankey said it himself, and I'm paraphrasing, that, hey, look, we've got to even look at these television contracts. We're not sure that we want to jump into a long, extended television contract with a college football playoff, even though we're expanding past 2025, 2026. We don't want other teams coming in like SMU and other teams, a group of 5, to split this revenue. You would have to think at least the governance, if they're talking about doing something different, that those conversations privately have probably been brewing for several months, if not longer than that.
Yeah, I think what we've seen really since Greg Sankey became the commissioner of the SEC, almost a decade ago now, for Mike Slive, he's been at the forefront. He's been forward-thinking. He has been proactive in the SEC's best interest. And again, as someone who works in a Division I conference office, it is the commissioner's job of any conference to do what's in the best interest of the member institutions of that conference. What the SEC is doing, what the Big Ten are doing right now, I do believe are in the best interest, especially financially, of those two entities, where the larger philosophical question comes in from many across the country, including myself as a college football fan, is, are these things in the best interest of the college football as a sport or college athletics as an enterprise? But again, if we're talking just college football, are these changes, are these proposals in the best interest of the sport of college football as a whole? My personal opinion is that they are not. However, I do understand why these decisions are being made by these conference commissioners of these Power 5, Power 4 conferences, because they're charged with one thing: generating revenue and making great experiences for their student athletes and their member institutions. And there's nothing in their job description that says you should do things and act in accordance with what's going to lead to the outcomes that are in the best interest of the college athletics enterprise as a whole or the sport of college football. And so until we can somehow figure out a way to merge the best interest of the Big Ten, of the SEC, with the best interest of the sport, we're going to continue to see these two paths going down in a separate direction. And ultimately, Jake, I think what it might end up being is a fracturing of FBS football at the highest level. And you now have more than half of the members involved in FBS football now, they're no longer designated as the top tier of college football. Could there be some benefits to that? Sure. I'm not sure that the benefits outweigh the negatives, though, at least with the facts that we have in front of us today.
Heather Dinich put this out on ESPN. I saw you responded to it. And I'm paraphrasing again. Will we stay at 12 teams? You think it's going to go higher than 12? Probably. I would have to say it probably will, as far as the number of participants. At some point, I think we will go beyond 12.
Yeah, for as long as we have this national playoff, Jake, I guess that's the caveat here. If the Big Ten and the SEC grow to, 20 or 24 teams and they start doing their own thing and kind of cut everybody else out, that's a whole different conversation. For as long as we have the current construction of a Power 4 and a group of 5 or whatever that the numbers break down as, I do believe that really the only thing that I know for certain about college football is that the playoff is going to continue to expand. You look at the history of college football from 1869 until 1997, there was no playoff system. It was, you played the regular season, then we introduced bowls as we get going in the college football history, and that ultimately ends up with a couple of polls declaring who the national champions are. 1998, of course, we introduced the BCS. That lasted through 2013. That was a quote, two-team playoff, if you will, or a +1 system, as they called it at the time. Then in 2014, we get the 4-team playoff. That lasted for just 1 decade. I mean, if you look at the rate of growth in recent years and just the extra money to be had, again, let's go back to what's the commissioner's job? To generate revenue for its membership. The best way to do that, the easiest way to do that right now, is to add on playoff games at the end of the year, because we see what the media rights deals yield when you add in that inventory for television. And when that happens, more money's on the table. So until we hit the point of diminishing returns or no further revenue experience from adding games, I do believe we're going to continue to add to the playoff. And FCS is at 24. I think the next step's probably 16, but I could see the FBS being at 24 at some point. And even beyond that, I mean, at what point, though, do we say enough's enough? Or at what point do we say, okay, we're adding all these postseason games for a limited number of teams? At what point do we cut back on the regular season? Because at the end of the day, you can't ask student athletes to play. I mean, right now it could be upwards of 17 games. That's an NFL season. When are we going to start saying that's too many games? Maybe if they get classified as employees, that becomes part of the CBA or the collective bargaining that they're going to be doing between the players union and whatever's on the other side, the NCAA or some other entity. All of these questions, Jake, go back to your first question of what does college athletics look like? What does college football look like in the next 3 to 5 years? These are all, it's an interconnected web, and they all lean on each other.